mortals. It's your ever faithful Mirabelle, here to remind you the universe's sense of humor is far more twisted than yours. You think you're writing your own story, but half the time you're just scribbling notes in the margins while fate writes the script. Today's theme? Choices, but not the easy kind. We're talking quantum entanglement, parallel realities, and whether you're really the author of your life or just a character in someone else's story. Or maybe that's the same. Who better to explore these questions than with Lori Lothian? She's not just an astrologer. Oh no. She's a cosmic storyteller, a muse whisperer, and someone who spent more time chatting with etheric entities than I spent in my 5th life. But let me ask you something. Do you ever wonder if your muse is leading you down the wrong path? Or worse, if your muse is just a prankster with a flair for the dramatic? If my muse is a prankster, he's in good company with you, Mirabelle. Oh, mortal, I'm not a muse. I'm the editor who makes sure your stories don't fall apart. But Lori? Lori's been dancing with the cosmos long enough to know that every choice is a fork in the road. And sometimes you're on both paths at once. So grab your tarot cards, light your candles, and prepare for a journey into the stories between the stars. Because today's guest isn't just reading the cosmos, she's writing them.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Aether and Ink Transmissions. I am Tiara Spells. I know some of you might be thinking, where is Penelope? She is here. But I am the new, yep, there she is.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, I am the new co-producer, and I'm just introducing myself really, really fast, and going to introduce the lovely Lothian as well. I'm so happy she's here. Love her channel, and she's just fantastic, and this will be a really great conversation. So, without further ado, the lovely Lori Lothian.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thanks, Tiara.
Yeah.
And hi, Penelope.
Hi, Lori. How are you doing?
I'm really good today. Thanks.
Good. Sorry about stepping on your intro, Tiara.
No, you're fine.
So welcome, everybody, to Aether and Ink. I am so excited to announce not only Tiara Spells has decided to come on as the co-producer of the show and eventual co-host, fingers crossed, if we can get her to stick around, and the exquisite Lori Lothian, renowned astrologer, mischief maker of the cosmos, you name it. She's bouncing on top of it. So we're very excited about the show we have today. Let's just do a quick check-in with our stream and see who's here. ML, hey ML, how's it going? Good to have you here. You want to grab that for me, Tiara?
Yeah. What's up, ML? And then we have Chris, Virgo Sun, Cancer Rising from Italy. Okay. Anouk, this title is intriguingly exciting. Well, that's all Penelope. Thank you. Saida, hello. Marlene from Nashville and Jennifer from Belmont, North Carolina.
Hello.
We have Vivian from Nova Scotia. Welcome, you all. I'm so happy you all are here. I really hope you enjoy the show today. How is putting out feelers into the ethers? What's going on? How are we all excited for Lori?
I know I am. I haven't seen you in ages. I'm so happy you're here.
And hi, Marlene. Marlene's one of my people. Yeah, so great to see everyone who's coming in. And if you know your rising sign, that's always handy. The Cancer rising folk, you got that Jupiter coming your way in June for a whole year, exalting you.
Finally.
So all the Cancer risings are going to ride high on a Jupiter wave. It's going to be so beautiful. I'm not to do too much astrology because we're going to talk creativity, but if you were alive in the 1850s, you were alive for Jupiter trining the North Node in Pisces from Cancer. And if you weren't, and basically, unless you're a vampire, you weren't alive, then this is going to be one of the best years of your life. So all you Cancers out there, yeah, you.
I'm Cancer rising. So I've been looking forward to Jupiter doing the rain dance in Cancer.
Yes. And then like hooking up with the North Node in Pisces. That's what makes it so magical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That forwardness. My Jupiter is actually conjunct the North Node, which is some crazy energies sometimes. So, all right, we're gonna do a card pull. We like to do a little card pull. Check the vibe.
Yeah, should have been.
I've got I like my unicorn deck, my unicorn energy, and today we have Not a Deer, Harmony. Love that. What about you, Tiara, our resident horror gal, pulling from the Pulp Fiction?
Page of Wands today.
Ooh,
I love the Page of Wands. Okay, I just pulled the Empress. A girl is never without a handy tarot deck, right?
I didn't even have to ask. You were just like, yeah, it's right here.
We're rolling. Yes.
Right.
The Empress is such a bounty, beauty, imagination, creativity, fertility. You know, we're rolling on it.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and pop your sign in the comments if you want to. Grab a card. If you want to grab a card, pop your draw in there. And let's get started on some questions. Let me pull mine up. Everybody knows that I like to sit here and look for things because I have 50 tabs open. It's around here. Let me pull mine up. Everybody knows that I like to sit here and look for things because I have 50 tabs open. It's around here. There's the lag. All right, here we go. Interview. Let's see, where are your questions at? Okay. Yes, Lori, you've talked about channeling your work from the Aether. How does that process feel for you? Is it more like receiving a message or is it more like collaborating?
Well, first of all, you know, if anyone here listening is a reader, just forget about writing and creativity because I do that too. But you know, if you're somebody who sits with a client at any point in your life, and you know, therapist maybe, or tarot, astrology, whatever you do, numerology, but you know, you're good because you go into the no self mind, right? You leave yourself. And the same thing with the art of writing. And as my main creative force, right? I'm a journalist, but also a fiction writer, published short fiction, literary, snotty writing back in my late 20s and early 30s, all that pretentiousness. But, you know, it's the same space that I'm in. And I remember one time, one of the best pieces of writing I ever did, I was on a bus ride from Washington, D.C. to Duke University. It was a cooking hot summer. And I think the bus was air conditioned, but I mean, it was a long bus drive. And I was on the way to a writers' conference there, and I was going to participate in this small group thing for writers, fiction writers. Mm-hmm. And I ended up starting a story and finishing a story handwritten on the bus. And it was one of my best pieces. And so the thing about that space is that you're surrendered to there's nothing to do here, really. Mm-hmm. Reading makes me nauseous on moving vehicles usually. So, you know, it's like, okay, what am I going to spend 5 hours doing? I'm going to let myself write. And I want to say one more thing about writing. I don't know how some of you guys are. I'm a terrible typist. So when I'm writing something on a keyboard, the flow gets stopped. So my poetry is never written on a keyboard. It's always written by hand, so that the flow of knowledge, information, or the muse is not interrupted by my backspace. You know, oh my God. Fix it up. I'm a really slow typist.
Oh, and there's definitely something to be said about when it's coming through you, when the inspiration is coming through you, like getting into that zone. And I grew up typing a lot, so like that's a safe place for me. But there's also something very creative and artistic about doing it by hand as well. I really should get into doing. I like the idea of doing poetry by hand. I want to only write poetry by hand from now on because it's just it's a more intimate form of expression.
Definitely. It definitely is. But it's funny when you write by hand, anything like that short story had a very dreamy quality, a very sort of surreal tone of voice. It wasn't my normal tone of voice. And so I do also find like the modality, you know, typing or writing by hand produces different results. And I do write like fiction on a computer keyboard, right? Because it's way too much work to do.
It's longer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like this idea of like, there is like I think Bob Dylan said something about writing is just inviting the muse in and giving them space to do their thing. So definitely having that sort of that buffer, you know, the bus with nothing to do. or like that sacred writing space, or that quiet hermit. I've been a hermit for a couple of years now, and it's like definitely conducive to writing, if not much else. But
Or a good coffee shop, like J.K. Rowling. And I actually went to the coffee shop where she wrote her books in Edinburgh, and like just to get myself inspired by that. But I also don't mind that, because coffee shops are funny. There's a bustle of noise around you, and for some people like me, because I have attention deficit disorder, amongst other things, the noise around me allows me to focus. Sometimes sitting alone in my house trying to write, I am not good at it. I need to find myself pulling inward and going into the empty space where the muse is waiting, because of the noise, because of the thing that I pull away from, so I'm a coffee shop writer when I'm writing fiction. Yeah.
That's so neo-romantic. I'm like, oh, like I'm the exact opposite. I need like absolute silence around me. I'd be interested though in experimenting with that, like creating kind of a sound barrier around myself. I imagine it could be very insular to do that as well. And it might be like, how cones are supposed to keep your monkey mind out of the way while you're like channeling a deeper influence. I wonder if it could have that effect on me.
Yeah.
I'd have to stop being
it does for me, but that's how my brain works, right? A hyper-focused ADD brain likes to pull away from something towards something. And actually, when I wrote a fiction length book, the whole thing is done, but I never published it. It was kind of a memoir, but it was fictionalized. I actually listened to music, like pop music, constantly. Had a playlist to write to, even though it wasn't instrumental. You would think, oh no, there's words in that, music.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me at all. So we're all different in how we're wired, right? So I put me home alone in a quiet space, and I'm in the refrigerator.
Right. I would be in the refrigerator writing. So
yeah.
I love it. All right. So let's pop into the next question. Okay. So when I wrote Deter's Requiem, I was told to write it as a method of mending my broken heart. Do you think our muses find us when we need them most, or do we have to seek them out?
For me, I need to go into a quiet space and intend to listen. So I don't think that I've been, let's put it this way. Some poems that I've written, I've been highly distraught and very drunk, like something bad happened in a relationship or a situation. And I've got, this is a few years ago, these poems particularly, and I've got a bunch of, angst going on. So let's get the glass of red wine and whatever else. And let's just go into the feeling state and then let the writing happen. That has been the muse working through the loss of a relationship or a breakup or something like that. Otherwise, unless there's some huge emotional content in my life, especially for poetry, then I need to create the space myself. I need to go, I'll invite the muse to the table. And I always get results when I do that. But I also say that, a lot of us don't have a life in which you've been purposed to emptying your mind, right? So seeing clients for readings in my 30s as a full-time psychic talking to the dead, that was a huge training ground for still mind, empty space, to be a skill set. And that's the same skill set that the muse is prone to interject in, is the same one that dead people can come through on, the same, it's the same line.
It's the same channel.
Same channel. Yeah, it's the same line, same channel.
Well, I mean, it's definitely a medium of communication for sure. When I get anything, it comes through in word form, and me, art form as well. So I'll see images if I'm doing a painting, or I'll hear something. And when I was told to write to tears, I just finished up it took me 3 years to write my first book. It took me 2 months to write my second one. And after that, and my second book was really the experiment in sitting down and like, okay, I am a writer. I have to write every day. And I think that a lot of people kind of experience the kickback. Like, I don't want to be told to be creative, but it's also about intentionally creating a space every day so that you can sit down and write. And I mean, I ended up loving what I wrote. And after that, it was like, okay, you figured out how to write a book. Now write one with intention and do it for a particular reason, and do it. And it is very not only just a spiritual healing journey, but also it was a very interesting creative exercise as well, because the book was about my relationships, my failed relationships, and my abject horror at the relationships that I had been in. So I ended up switching the tables, and I told it from the point of view of the missing white knight, and taking the story from his perspective and following it through. Why did he never show up? And I think that really allowed me to get in touch with a part of myself that was really hurt about feeling neglected and feeling abandoned. And it's like, well, if these are the kind of guys that you were like trying to date or looking for, you know, that connection with, they didn't show up because they had their own thing going on and they weren't able to show up for themselves, let alone somebody else. So it was a great exercise. It was a great, I don't want to say exercise, that feels a little bit too small. It was a great experience just in writing it. You know?
I find that's true, what you just said. Like one of the books that I wrote, fiction, it's a memoir fictionalized called How to Love, like that Kanye West song, How to Love, you know, and it was on my playlist. And I wrote a sort of a narrative, my post-divorce romp through all these serial monogamous relationships. And there were like 6 or 7 of them, you know, strung along like a necklace of beads, you know, on a necklace. But when I was writing that book, and that was way back in 2013, 14, I was writing the book waiting for this, like, first of all, it was therapeutic as all hell, because it was comedic too. It was a little bit like Chelsea Handler or whatever. It's funny. It was funny, but it was also serious. And it was also, you know, really cool to write because I got to process those energies of those relationships. But then I got to the relationship I was in at the time, and I had to include it because it's like a narrative. And I thought that was my happily ever after relationship. You know what I mean? It was my second husband. I'm like, wait, no, we got married in Scotland. It was so cool. And, you know, all of that. And I was looking to finish the book up with an exterior narrative of the happy ending. You know, after all the travails of all those relationships that had preceded it, like 7-8 years of serial monogamy. And that relationship, as I'm writing the book, is falling apart.
Oh, of course. Oh,
no,
yes.
but it was perfect. Because the deeper lesson underneath it all that I was learning was about loving myself. And it sounds like a cliche, right? But no other person outside of me was going to be some kind of panacea for whatever ails me in the interior of my psyche. And so, you know, that book isn't done yet. Like, I could add the new guy that I'm with now. I could keep going. When I'm 90 years old, I'll finish it. But anyway, like you said, the emotional processing that writing can have, even if it's not a direct reflection of your life, is also very valid. It's almost like a house cleaning. Yeah, like a house cleaning. And the muse, she doesn't always, you know, like big magic with what's her name? You know, the writer woman, the blonde woman. Someone in the comments will know who I'm talking about. She talks about the muse coming up to people and giving you these great ideas. And if you don't take the idea, she goes around and whispers in someone else's ear. And I can't count the times that's happened to me where I've had an incredibly interesting idea that I may have started a chapter or two on. And then like a year and a half later, the book is published. Someone else has written it, you know, the fiction. And I'm like, so the other thing with the muse is that if you open the space up to listen, reminds me of astrology. It reminds me of the oracle. There's something called flooding the oracle or dissing the oracle as well. You know, when you open up the sky to look at a divination, whether it's your tarot, your astrology, to divine the will of God, you have to listen to the answer and act on it, right? Otherwise, you fracture that relationship to the oracular understanding of reality. And so how many times that I have learned that lesson the hard way by not listening to the answer, because it serves me to listen to the answer, right? It's usually astrology gives me accurate oracular guidance about which way to go in my life, left, right, up, down, which multiverse I'm splitting into. But similarly, when the muse is speaking to you as a writer or a creator, or even an artist, whatever you're doing, and you don't pick up the pen or you don't put your fingers to the keyboard, you know, it kind of just wanders off to someone else, you know, who was more ready to take on this project. Find that the more I dismiss the muse, the more the muse is like reluctant to engage. And that's been a part of my journey in the last decade, healing the writing wound. I'm back to writing again, but I got so caught up in content creation that writing fell by the wayside. And now I'm like reestablishing that link to the muse.
Good. Yes, because I've always admired your poetry. I've admired your writing. I'm very glad to hear you back into it. And Robert Bly, a poet, wrote a book. I can't remember what it's called right now, but he said something about how the shaman or the wise woman or the wise man within a society has lessons that they learn through their etheric travels or through their channeling or for whatever, and then they have to turn around and tell the story in an entertaining way to the people so that they can, that's how they disseminate their knowledge, right? And it makes sense that the story wants to be told. Like there are certain things that are floating around that creative types who are logged in to that particular channel. It's almost like, who wants to bid on this story, you know?
Yes, I love that. Yes, who wants to bid on this story?
Who
Exactly.
wants to write this one? Yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
for me, oh, go ahead.
I just remembered her name. It popped in as you were saying. It's Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth
Oh,
Gilbert.
okay. Oh, she
Gilbert.
Eat, Pray, Love, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Her book
okay.
is Big Magic. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, it just when it came flying in, but keep going.
So you gave yourself space to the 5-minute thing, right? I'll think of it in 5 minutes.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I think that every story, it wants to be told and it'll find the right writer. And I think that part of my journey was you talked about healing the writer's wound, or for me it was sitting down and actually deciding to be a writer and opening up that channel on the daily, which I still try to maintain at least a daily writing practice, just because that makes me available for whatever inspiration wants to come through. Even though it sounds boring as hell to sit down and write every day at 2:00 p.m. exactly.
Oh, I always feel refreshed after I write. Actually, I feel very rejuvenating. I was going to say, in the astrology world, right, there's a writing house. It's the third house of your chart. So everyone will have a different sign there. It depends on your rising sign. So for me, the third house would have been because I'm Aquarius rising, is Aries. And Chiron entered the Aries zone of the sky in 2019. And that really was the beginning of me completely engaged as content creator and astrologer on YouTube, and completely letting all of the writing go. I mean, even my Wake and Dreamer blog, nothing really of any momentous nature, just almost like a kind of like, I should write something. Let me try to find something to write. So it was an interesting time, and the Chironic wound is leaving that part of the sky. Chiron is leaving there now in the next 2 years, 2027, he's exiting stage left. But I literally watched the sky heal the wound. You know, it's like life is a strange mirror. I watched as Chiron kiboshed my writing, and then I watched as he got an eclipse to eclipse the wound in April of 2024. And then the wound is now, I started a Substack column. So you're a Cancer rising. We could do you, right? Your Cancer rising makes Virgo the sign of the writer.
Your third house. Jupiter and Virgo too. Jupiter in my third house as well.
Oh my God.
It's too many freaking ideas, really. It's like, I don't want to bid on all of the ideas. I'm cool. I just want to write one today.
Yes. Well, Jupiter will definitely multiply like little babies of ideas in your third house of thinking and writing to do service other than maybe Mercury can help, still the mind a bit there, wherever Mercury sits in your chart, and allow Jupiter
actually
to
square Jupiter in Sagittarius. They play games in my chart.
Oh no, that's not too bad. That's a beautiful mutual reception.
No. It's like one end is a telescope and one end is a microscope, and it's just a matter of flipping it back and forth. Really,
yes, exactly. Yeah, but they're in each other's signs, and so they're having a hotline to each other as well. So it makes for a very good chart, actually, for a writer. Yeah.
I knew I was doing the right thing. I just had to sit down and actually do it.
Exactly. I can't count the times I'm looking at a client's chart and I can tell right away they're a writer, or they're going to be an author. For any of you writers, authors out there, the astrology of the asteroid Athena, Pallas Athene, she looks like a diamond with a cross underneath her. She is 8 out of 10 times you're a librarian, a lawyer, or an author. And the librarian and the author go together, like the archivist of books, right?
Yeah, she's conjunct my moon in my 10th house, and I have a bucket chart. Everything supports the moon. So she's on one side and Ceres on the other side, which explains the degree in environmental history. But
that's perfect. Yeah.
It really, I mean, like it is always like so interesting to see, like you said, it's a reflection in a mirror of like what is going on, and the deeper that you can read into that, the more revelations you have about your own life as well. Let's pop right along to the next question. Tiara, do you want to pop in and give us do you want to ask the next?
Sure. I actually did have a question because you mentioned your blog, and I was just wondering how that kind of came to be. Like, was it like something that you were like really passionate about before, and then just kind of like Or what was the process like with that, and then going into your YouTube channel?
Yeah, the Awakened Dreamer blog was precipitated by a spiritual awakening event in 2011 in October. And I just wanted to write about it. Like I was like, whoa, all of a sudden I'm vast, spacious, empty, calm, peace, I'm everything, I'm nothing. I mean, I had an episode of enlightenment, I guess. And what I needed to do is share it somehow. So I decided to create a blog called The Awakened Dreamer. And I didn't even know what a blog was at that time. A friend said, why don't you start a blog? I go, what's a blog? This is 2011, guys. So I started the blog and I called it Dispatches from the Frontiers of Awakening. It was really just a narrative of the things that I experienced as time went on after that big enlightenment episode, in quotes, enlightenment episode, and how it mutated and how it impacted my life and how I saw the world differently because the perceiver had changed, that kind of thing. So that was really just me exploring and sharing where I'd gone through an awakening experience. And a lot of the poetry that I have on that blog, there's something called Sexy Love Poems to God. That poetry preceded the awakening. And that's the thing I would love to talk about just briefly is that we don't realize that fiction is prophetic and poetry is prophetic. I mean, I'll give you a fun example. On that book about relationships, How to Love, I was in a coffee shop writing about a sex scene with the guy comes home to the girlfriend and paints. Oh, that was a fiction. That was called The God Box Lover. And the guy comes into the house. I'm writing this in a coffee shop and he's got chocolate body paint for, putting it all over his girlfriend and having sex with this, chocolate body paint. Well, I got home that night after writing it. And my boyfriend comes in the door with a chocolate body paint. So and the poetry that I wrote is 2009, 2010 was, or even 11, the poetry was 2009, 10, and it preceded the awakening. It was literally forecasting my future.
All right. That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. So we need to actually look at the muse and think she's also very psychic.
Yeah, you're so right. Yeah. I actually did have one more question. There was I when I was in college, I took a Sex in the Bible class and also an Islam class where we talked about kind of like different images of religious figures and like how people communicate, like feel towards them and stuff like that. And I was curious because your work is called Sexy Love Poems to God, if there was like some sort of connection with you between romance and sexuality and desire with like the divine, essentially.
Yeah, like it's the Rumi stuff, right? It's all the poems of Hafiz and Rumi that declare the relationship to the divine to be a cosmic romance, really. Yeah. And so the name of that just came off that idea that, really good poetry, like the Songs of Solomon as well, they often lead you to a feeling that you're writing romantic stories or romantic poetry because it's a love affair. When we're in a love affair with the divine, it is an amazing experience. It certainly dwarfs mortal coil love.
I heard Sexy Love Poems to God, and I'm like, yes, hello. I know this one. I love how often dreams and writing are that prophetic. I can't think of an example right now, but yeah, I mean it's interesting. That story in particular was great. I love that. But yeah, you can kind of map your future just by opening yourself up to it and writing it down, or create your future that way. We'll get into that a little bit when we start talking about the quantum nature of reality.
I think you can create your future, by the way. Astrology makes us fatalists quite often, but you can enter the dream time, as the Aboriginal Australian First Peoples would say. And from then you can engineer, from the dream time, a deeper space of consciousness, you can engineer reality to some degree. I mean, there are going to be guardrails there, and I can never engineer reality in this lifetime to be able to sing on key. Like it's not for this character, right? But I could engineer the dream time for some positive developments in my life for sure. And maybe fictionalizing your dreams and wishes or writing a poem about it could also be really useful.
I agree. Doing a bit of dabbling in sigil magic and creating symbols that create particular vibrations and spell magic around them have that kind of effect. I mean, I definitely believe that there's you can channel energies into a talisman of some sort. And I think that you can do that with intention with writing. I mean, there's a couple of chaos magicians out there. Grant Morrison is one, and I can't remember his name. He's kind of scary. The guy who did like The Watchmen, he's also a chaos magician who, he created Constantine, the character Constantine, and he's actually met him. So like there are writers out there who have like written about things and they will talk about going out. Like Grant Morrison was writing about one of his main character based on him was having like this lung condition problem in his comic book. And like 2 months later, he's in the hospital with the same thing. So like, be careful what you put your characters
Oh my
through.
God, absolutely. Well, you see the imaginal realm, right? That's the Empress card. The imaginal realm is where we create fiction, but it's also where we create our lives. And it's so important to know that. I remember years ago, I did an imaginal session with myself because I'd had a baby and I'd put on like weight after the baby was born, like, because I was really enjoying my Haagen-Dazs ice cream or whatever. And so I thought, I got this extra 10 pounds, it's time to take it off. And so I lie down in the bed and I had this visualization fully clear of myself in my 20s because I had the baby in my 30s and how fit I was and healthy and energetic and buff and toned. And I just kind of inhabited the memory of myself at another time. You know, it actually manifested within like 6-7 months. The weight just fell away. I didn't change my dietary style. You know, I got more motivated to exercise a bit, but it wasn't a huge like, then she went on the big diet. And then what happened was, this is a cautionary note, in the time that I was remembering, I had a long distance love affair from a guy in Rome who was my husband, who I had the babies with. And it was all about these love letters going back and forth. And what did I manifest? A mad scientist who totally was into what I was writing about on like about, you know, being talking to the dead and stuff, who hooks up to me, emails me, and starts a long distance love affair by email. And like literally, though I was in a troubled time in the marriage and was coming to an end, but I literally recreated buff, toned, and long distance email love affair. Me and some dude like several states over.
I love it. That's so funny. Yeah, be careful what you write.
Be careful what you imagine, because if we're writing, I don't know about you, but I'm also in my imagination, right? I'm cinematically seeing the characters and hearing the characters.
Yeah. And but it's also very wonderful, I think, too, if you can, there's that Mercury is a scribe, but he's also the magician, right? So like, I mean, if you can use that intentionally and not put don't do what Grant Morrison do and figure it out the hard way, that like, if you're going to connect yourself to a character, like be careful what you put them into.
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right. I am going to right quick, just ask everybody, if you are enjoying the show, to like and subscribe. You know how YouTube works. And also, if any of you are aspiring writers who want to do something after the podcast, right now, Jared Kaufman just stopped in. He's my editor. And he has a wonderful community for writers called Right Now. And I have posted his link in the comments. So go check it out.
Kaufman is great.
Kaufman is great. Wait. I have it. Where is it? Don't forget to put a dragon on it.
Put a dragon on it. Yeah.
Everything. Thank you for that, Jared. So yeah, and let's roll right into it. This conversation is going so well. We're doing great, guys. Let's see what our next question is. We kind of covered, do you see the creative process as an act of healing? Let's say, all right, let's talk about the dipole effect. You've written about the dipole effect, the idea that every moment splits into two possible realities. Do you feel like writing is a way of navigating those parallel paths?
Well, I mean, that is an experiment. You just created an experiment, really, to see if that could be true. Quite possibly it is, but it's not recognized as that. You know, in other words, once you split, you don't know what you missed. I'll tell you, like the timeline split the United States had when Trump was elected. I mean, that felt like, to me, one of the biggest timeline splits I've ever felt. And I wasn't writing about it, but I was divining about it. But when sometimes there's these micro timeline splits that are so tiny, they're like the reality shift is so micronutia. You like get together with a girlfriend and suddenly your hair is like 2 inches longer than it was last time you saw her. And she goes, no, it's always been this long. You know, these weird little shifts that happen quite often when we bifurcate into another slightly different timeline in the multiverse. But then every now and then you'll get a huge one. But I don't know what the relationship of writing is to it. Like when I notice I'm fracturing into another timeline or I'm splitting, I usually have an event, and often it's intense. Like I call it shattering the vessels. I drop a wine glass and it smashes, or so one time I can tell you, so this has been away from writing, but I was trying to manifest an end to these really bad allergies, these seasonal allergies in Vancouver, Canada. And so I went into a flotation tank and I did a whole visualization to choose to cut into a new timeline where I didn't have them. And then I noticed that I only can really amplify or manifest it truly when there's a shock to my system. That's what I mean by the dropped glass or a bumped head. And I parked my car in front of a grocery store like 25, 30 minutes after I left the float tank. And some guy came along and sheared my freaking mirror off. And I'm sitting there in my car and I hear, and he literally sheared the entire mirror off my driver's side. My heart was pounding because I didn't know what was happening, right? The sound of metal grinding. And I noticed that's how I know I'm shifting a timeline. I make a joke. I shattered the vessel. I wonder what timeline I'm going to be in next, like usually a wine glass. So, but with writing, I don't know how that interfaces. I'm really not sure. I really don't know the answer.
It could be something worth looking into, or it could also split you into different people if you wanted to keep them in tandem, which might not be so much fun. Don't know how that would work. Give it a shot. You know me, I'll try anything. I like a little chaos.
What you're saying is, does writing collapse the wave function is what you're really saying. And I think writing can collapse the wave function. That's why, for instance, that guy got the lung problem. He collapsed a wave function for a story of a problem with health and lungs. So I don't see there's any difference between just imagining and writing, really. If you imagine it deeply enough, you'll collapse a wave function like I did for getting slim with no effort, again, losing 10 pounds, and yet also collapsing around having a long distance love affair with emails. And, you know, what the hell? And with my husband, that same time frame was, the old international mail that we had to send out in the little blue envelopes, because there was no internet then. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So so for anybody who isn't quite sure what that means, I think that what you mean by I've tried to keep up with you. I really have. And I think
everything's indeterminate. Everything's in a state of indeterminacy, and it can be anything and everything all at once, so until like, for instance, Schrodinger's cat, a thought experiment, the cat in the box, dead or alive, because they're pinging there's little radioactive decay going on in the box. Anyway, which way is it going to go? And until you observe the cat, it's neither dead nor alive. It's in an indeterminate state of both at the same time. And so by observing the outcome, you collapse the wave function. So could our imaginations be a similar mechanism, whether we actually take the time to write it down or just deeply visualize it? Are we using that power of inner observation to collapse a wave function? And it's a question. I don't know the answer,
I think that my studies in sigilmancy and chaos magic, they kind of do something similar, where they create a talisman and they break it and then they forget about it completely. So in essence, they put something in the mundane world, attach that imaginative outcome to it, and then broken it, smashed the vessel, forgotten about it completely so that it reappears later on. So it kind of one of the ways that they hack it is doing it like that. So but yeah, if you practice long enough, I think you should be able to just what is it, the abracadabra, I speak it and it is so, that really high magic style, like badass,
right. Well, but thank God we don't actually think it though, and it's so, because no one has control these days of their thoughts. Everyone's got rampaging natter mind. Me too, half the time. But I take time to like still out my mind when I can. Where thank God it's not so simple that we can think it and it's so, right.
Right. Yeah, because that would be I have intrusive thoughts that I just do not need manifesting in this timeline.
right. But just back to the creativity and the manifesting and whether they're intertwined, as like you could do with talismanic magic. I think it's almost a great class to teach, Penelope, that you could put together a bunch of people who want to experiment in this idea that we're writing for the idea of the imagination. Neville Goddard calls it the awakened imagination. And we use it as a kind of a collaborative experimental group. I jump in, where the task is to write something into being in your real life.
I love it. Yeah, I'm very intrigued about kind of reality bending. Well, I mean the word weird means, or witch means to bend reality. So it's kind of what it is, right? Is like,
Oh, does it really? Does it really
I
mean
think
that? I didn't know.
weird or witch, one of those means to bend reality, or to
Okay.
to bend reality.
Yeah.
So I mean it's the same kind of like, yeah, and it's and I wonder, and I think that once you introduce more people to it, more imaginations to it, with the, I think that's the idea with the talisman as well, is more you show the talisman to people and they don't know what it is, but they can put power into it. So like you put more imaginations into the power. I think that's why people who are popular writers, like the chaos magicians that I see that I brought up, a lot of people have seen their work, which ends up powering it even more, charging it. I think that's what they call charging the sigil. So
charging
yeah,
the sigil. Yeah.
charging the sigil. Yeah. Ooh, are we gonna do a class? Who wants to charge sigils with me? Yay! I was just thinking about starting a book club, but hey, we could also do sigilmancy for neophytes as well.
That sounds like fun, actually. It sounds like a lot of fun.
It does. I would love to, and especially like with this. Well, we were talking about right before the show the idea that the creatives are the way forward. And that creativity and the artists and writers and poets and musicians and visual artists are bringing into their work, the stories, the lessons that the muse is offering the bids, and they're taking it. And organized religion seems to have such a, I'm not saying this like exclusively about all organized religion, but it's become a more of an artifact for a particular hierarchy that isn't necessarily, because of the flattening of the world and the flattening of the globe with the internet, and with the increasing reemergence of the intuitive. We have the need for a different organization for our I'm thinking the Hierophant here, like a different organized, more organic spiritual lives. And I think that a lot of artists are tapping into that energy.
Yeah, well, and it is the Aquarian Pluto transit over the next 19 years that's going to shift with the AI, but also the stuff in Gemini with the Uranus and Gemini, going to shift a lot of how we operate at so many levels, and creativity is certainly one of them. You said something though. You said something about how the artists are leading the way. Well, they've always led the way. If you go back to the fiction of Philip K. Dick, a huge amount of his fiction has become, stories that have emerged in the real world, or the things that he postulates, like in Man in the High Castle, an alternate universe where he sees, what happens if Germany and Japan win the Second World War? What world do we live in? But then he has this engagement in that narrative, which was a fiction, and now it's the series of the Zen guy, the Japanese fella, who's quite Zen-like, being able to travel between those two worlds. Though that kind of stuff is now what physics talks about, but he's like channeling it. It's also a little bit like there was a book written in the 1800s about the last president of the United States whose son was named Barron. And the whole book is literally forecasting Donald Trump's election. And that's one of those really weird 1850s artifacts. And it literally, if you read that book, the fiction, I think there's 2 books, it actually talks about, some of the policies that Donald Trump's enacting right now are right in that book. Like, it's not like Donald Trump went to find an 1850s book about the last president, and that's also done. How would and with a son named Barron, and how would Donald Trump be the last president? And that's another thing. If that book is prophetic and it was written all that time ago, and now we're seeing it enacted, does this mean that the United States will no longer function as a republic, a democratic republic, and there's going to be a huge fracture before this term is over?
Yeah.
To think about, right?
I haven't read the book, but like just seeing as a historian, seeing some of the things that are happening now, it's I mean, it's definitely, there's definitely some political aggression going on that may shift. I don't know how, I don't want to say permanently, I hope not permanently, but may shift the foundations of American politics, which is where I was it was
Well,
made the way it was for a reason.
even just the electoral college being somewhat broken could be a shift.
Yeah.
You know, if you look
Yeah.
at that book though, and you wonder, like, because there's more than I've got to tell you here. Like, I mean, there's 100
Mhm.
details that correlate to this presidency and this president
Mhm.
and his son. You know, that's the creative mind of a writer leading the way. And, you know, that book is still here for us to reflect on and go back and look at. But it's like,
Mhm.
I think a lot of writers don't recognize that they're prophetic, no matter how much they don't believe it. Once you go into the empty stillness and the muses shouting at you, half the time she's an oracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or she's
No,
a time traveler or a time traveler.
Yeah.
Because if you go,
definitely.
guys, did anyone ever read The Mists of Avalon or The Red Tent? Those two books.
I have The Mist of Avalon. I haven't read it.
I was like, I was there in Druid Britain. I know I was, because I'm reading this book and I'm having like memory flashbacks. And I thought,
Oh, wow.
she channeled this book. She actually literally, the muse is a time traveler for the Mists of Avalon. It's really what it would have been like. And same with the Red Tent,
Wow.
about, you know, the women and the menses in the tent during the patriarchal time of Abraham in the desert. Well, I'm like,
okay. Yeah, I have
yes,
that.
and I'm like, I remember this life. I was there. And like, I feel like the muse either tells you the future or channels the past, you know?
Yeah, and often the past becomes the future anyway.
Mhm.
That's really fast. I think that, yeah, there is I almost like my experiences with it is like there is this kind of glob of like prophecy, this etheric glob that you can kind of link into and see things that are, you know, going on. We have such a limit. We have little brain processors that can only do so much. So I mean, it's not necessarily for us to decide whether or not it's worth writing about, but if we write about it, it can be beneficial later. And the other thing I wanted to say was like, it so often seems like art and science are like in this little like on the cutting edge of the edge of what human progress is capable of. And art always edges science out. Art's like, we're going to create these little communication devices in Star Trek, and then we get cell phones. You know, art's always got that bit of imagination is always going to beat out science, because it's that
Got the leading,
science can
the
only
leading
say,
edge.
yeah, science can only say what's actually going on. It's empirical, but imagination can show you what's next. So
yeah, absolutely true. And I think that's, we should just be looking at the fiction writers. I mean, there's a difference between writing a murder mystery, but I mean, you know, but the fiction writers who have an eye on the futuristic or the fantastical or the next wave of technology, like cyberpunk back in the day, you know, all that really come to pass that we're there already. And you know, yeah, it's pretty enchanting. I love this conversation because it reminds me of how the creative part of my life really is needing a lot of water these days. I got to get the big watering can out and get back to writing, more so than Substack. Substack is astrology.
Yeah, and but like there's something definitely prescient about writing right now, and I think that we've gotten with the progression of like from the invention of the printing press to now, and the creation of the internet and giving people the potential for having an audience, and no matter what we do, I think that it's tapping into a larger like mycelium, you know, like mushrooms grow and then they have this mycelium, that underground connected sort of like the web that connects them. We've got this like artistic mycelium it feels very exciting, and it feels like it's happening right now. And I think that I feel like a lot of people are actually struggling to insert themselves in that, because society says things have to be this way. And the creative mind says, no, they can be different. And I think that there's this struggle between like the mundane needs and the neo-romanticism of like being able to live your most creative life and trying to, I think that my thing is I want to try to create some sort of combination where like these are viable choices that I'm making, but I'm allowing myself to be giving myself that creative space so that I can experience my calling and not worry about like, you know, going to work as a teller, which was not my
there's
thing
an archetype. There's an archetype here that you're addressing, the archetype of the starving artist, you know, the penniless artist and the sacrifice of the artist and being recognized only after you're dead and blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of like structure around the idea of the artist, you know, and of course there are breakout artists all the time, you know, fiction writers, you know, and, you know, Imagineers, like, you know, who do incredible work. Look at Stephen King is quite wealthy because of his writing, but I mean, it's still, there's a substrate that the universe is saying to you, if you don't break the archetype yourself, like make a sigil and smash it, I don't know what you got to do with it. Artists, think that it's the non-viable course of direction. Like when I went to university, I had a choice of going into the fine arts because I'm a really good painter and a sketcher, and I can do realistic portraiture, and it was my passionate other thing I did besides writing. But I went into the writing field because I knew I could get a journalism job, and I instead of going to university and doing fine art, which I thought, well, it just means I'll be, I won't have a career. Really, I won't have a career. I'll just be an artist. So I think there is a reason to suspect that could be true if enough people think it's true, because then you're underneath the spell of the collective conscious idea of it. And there's something else you said. You said something about the creative mind being the leading edge and all of that, and we're waking up more to it. But I'm also thinking it's very much about that Thomas More quote that the soul has an absolute need for excursions into enchantment, an absolute something need for excursions into enchantment. It needs it like the body needs food and the mind needs thought or ideas. That's the gist of the quote. And I think that the creative space is the space of enchantment.
Yes.
Scientists are creative. Like the guy that discovered the benzene ring stared into a fire and saw an image in the fire that he then identified benzene, right? Like he literally got a flash like we do with the muse. So it's not like science is uncreative. No, but it's the process by which you engage in the writing or the science or the art. Are you in touch with that empty, still place within you so that you can hear or, dialogue with the muse?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that there's definitely there is a belief that you have to be like a certain kind of writer if you're going to make a living at it. And that is definitely not the kind of writer I want to be. And I think that kills potential a lot of the times because of I wrote a murder mystery, but it's also a deeply spiritual romance as well. And it's got a minotaur in it because I can't not do me when I write. But I realized this is not going to be a book I can sell on Amazon. This is not going to be a book that I'm just going to be able to, put out there and say, this is the genre. It's very much about genre. This is the genre. This is the kind of people who will buy this book, things like that. And I realized if I did that, I would have to be a different kind of writer. And that's not the kind of stories that the muse and I are not telling those kind of stories. So for me, it's been not only about trying to figure out how to be a writer, but how to be a writer who writes what they want to write, which I think is a conversation that is going to happen.
Yeah, but you've got Athena on the moon in your 10th house, and that means popular public mass appeal for something you author, and therefore your assumptions are wrong. And so I wouldn't say that you can still be you, and you can have minotaurs and unicorns. You could be like the Neil Gaiman female writer. And by the way, poor Neil, I know some kind of scandal about his life, but his fiction is damn freaking good. And so you can tap a vein of the masses, because I know your chart. You have the moon with the author in the 10th house, and moon means you're going to hit a mass spark. Something you could do can hit the masses and be very popular. So then we go back to, is writing timeline splitting, or is it creative? Is it that or not? And I think it is potentially that way if you wanted to write a fiction about a writer who doesn't think that she can hit the mainstream because she's got that weird way, and then and write that story, write that for yourself. Write it into
it's almost like, live that one, make that art, but make me the paintbrush, or make me the main character, or make and it very much does feel like trying to smash something very rigid, and becoming an artist and a writer. When I say artist, I mean writer, poet, whatever, in the way that I want to do that. And I want to do it in such a way that it opens the door for other people to do that as well, because I think there are stories that want to come out. And I think that there is an infrastructure that is preventing that. And part of it is just the mentality of the starving artist. And part of it is a lack of confidence in our ability to say things. And so often when you're a creative, I think that a lot of people experience creativity as sort of this secluded thing, especially writers. And also, I think usually with artists, I've noticed American artists, anybody who wants to do any sort of art had this incident in kindergarten or first grade or second grade where somebody told them their drawing sucked and they never wanted to draw again because of that. And I think that creativity has taken a hit just generally in our society, because it's okay to tell somebody their stuff sucks. And it's not okay to do that, because that discourages their expression and their self-expression. It's like telling them they suck, So we've got this whole you know what I mean? Like you've got this, the self who is wounded by the perception and is reluctant to put their artistic expression out there. And you've also got the infrastructure of like, you have to go get this 9-to-5 job, or you have to work at, you know, the gas station, or you have to, you know, and all of that. And it's just like, I really, really, really want to like break the matrix on this one. So that's what I'm here to do.
Well, I think
And
yeah. I have several Cancer people who are authors and writers in my client base and stuff, and they're going to be really happy with Jupiter coming up soon. But you know, the deeper thing about writing or any kind of creativity and being a creative and an artist, right, is that you are going to have to find that place within yourself that no matter what you put out there and how you do it and what the response is or isn't, that you're still happy, like, and you're still okay with your life, you know, because if you're writing and creating to be rich or famous, and that's the motive, you're probably not very deep into the muse, you know, like she's got ideas for you. Hopefully some of them will be a hit and some of them won't. Some of them will and some of them won't. So.
Yeah, I think the writing itself is. Oh, what?
I just had an idea too. I got to tell you guys something. Sorry. This is like, okay, Neptune is your imagination in your chart. Mercury is your mind and your ideas and your ability to communicate, write, and do magic. Okay, but you wanted to look at your Neptune Mercury stories in your chart to see what kind of writer you are, or creator you are. But I was just going to say that energy of, you know, the manifesting, you know, make it so, dream time, dream realm is like, if you look at your Neptune in your chart, there's so many clues to how you can access the dream time or the imaginal realms as a creative. You know, some people here maybe artists, like making vases or something. So if you're listening, so your Neptune is a portal to that muse, in my view, because it is a planet of imagination. So everyone listening who knows astrology too, and you figure out which house your Neptune is in, there's like, you know, 12 houses, then you figure out what sign, and you parse it by sign. What planets does Neptune talk to? If you're born with Neptune moon conjunctions, Neptune moon trines, Neptune moon opposition squares, you have a high functioning psychic ability as well as a profound connection to the imagination, and Mercury Neptune contacts as well.
I have Mercury and Jupiter that are square, which is an easy square to get over, but I also have my moon trine Neptune in Sagittarius. So
see, that moon night trine Neptune is beautiful.
It's transcendental art, right? Like it's art that transcends, like, you know, Venus, I love her for beauty and poetry and like kind of the aesthetic of art, but Neptune is the stuff that'll like go right into your soul. Really, and like it pierces through all illusions. It is illusion, but it also pierces through. It's the lie that tells the truth sometimes. And
Neptune is the god of channeling too. Like when we, you know, how people channel books, you know, well, Seth speaks and all of that. That's a Neptunian feature as well. And of course, I think anyone who's writing anything that this any good, you got the muse whispering it at you as well. You're kind of channeling her, whatever she has to say to you, you know.
Wow. Okay. So we're kind of coming up on, we've been here for about an hour. I'm going to look at these questions very quick. I'm going to ask a couple more, and then Lori is going to treat us to a reading of her poetry, which I'm super excited about. So, for writers and creators who feel stuck, what advice would you give them about recognizing when they're on the superior creative path versus the one that feels forced? Do you have any advice for that?
Well, for me, if I'm attempting to write something and I feel excited, rejuvenated, and refreshed afterwards, I think I'm on the right track. But if I finish up and I've got a migraine or something, I'm on the wrong track. Often I don't realize that I'm struggling until I'm done. I'm like, oh, that was exhausting. You know, a really cool jump start for writers might be to grab an eclipse by the balls. You know, these are dangerous things. They're super wild cardy, and it's not good for talismanic magic. It's not good for, I wouldn't prefer to do like a ayahuasca journey or something on an eclipse. I would like to stay as much as I can outside the portal of what comes through causing harm. But some of my most creative projects, writing poems, whatever, have happened when I was in muse land, in the empty listing connection to the muse during the eclipse. And so there's something about those eclipses. You get 4 a year, you know, it's not like they're super rare, but to grab something like that, because that's a true portal, especially a total solar eclipse, but all eclipses are energetic portals. And so to use that creatively, because it's kind of like a doorway. And if you're in a right mindset around the doorway, you don't know what could come through. It could be quite profound, and eclipses impact the collective. So as soon as you do magic with an eclipse, yes, okay, that's dangerous for you. But if you're doing writing or inspired creativity on an eclipse, it's very possible that something you create could have mass impact. It could be very successful because the nature of an eclipse is about world events, really, especially a
you also
solar
have to be
eclipse.
half crazy to try it. But hey, when's the next one? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I did a really great. I channeled like a 5-page start to a novel on the April 8th eclipse, total solar eclipse, and I think it's really good. I just don't have time to finish it, right, to continue it. But I'm telling the muse, don't go somewhere else with my idea. It's like, do not. I'm still on it. I'm coming back.
Yeah.
Be a little patient with us. We have this whole like karmic mundane thing that we have to figure out. So we got to eat.
And by the way, there are eclipses on the horizon. So March 29th is the Aries eclipse, for example. So everyone Google eclipses, and if you're a writer, go have the courage to write on the eclipse.
I wonder how close that is to my moon.
The eclipse is at 10 degrees of Aries, 9-10 degrees.
Guess what my moon's on? 10 degrees.
9 Aries?
Aries, yeah.
Your moon is at 9 Aries?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my moon's at 8 Aries.
I was going to say, we both have moon Aries energy. Yeah.
It's going to hit my moon in the house of writing for me in my 3rd house. So yes, I'll be working that eclipse. I'll be working it.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna figure this one out. You said, Tiara, did you say that you have what was Neptune and Capricorn in the ninth house?
In the ninth house.
It's a writing house, is it not, Lori? Am I correct about that?
It's a book publishing house, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. I find that Capricorn 9th house people are better with historical fiction or memoirs, or than guidance books like How To, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. So guidance, memoirs, and historical fiction often are what happens with a Capricorn 9th house. If you're right.
Well, I have a quick I've always been really interested in documentaries, and I was wondering, I was wondering if it had like a correlation to that, because I've always I've had this dream of like traveling and just making docs all the time.
That's a classic. Neptune rules cinematography and movie industry, and of course Capricorn is documentation.
Awesome, cool.
You really surprised me when you'd seen that the Dust Bowl. I thought only nerds, like history nerds like me, had seen the Dust Bowl documentary, and you're like, no, Ken Burns, I love him. I was like,
no,
really?
I love documentaries. I worked for a film festival a couple years ago, and was obsessed with watching the docs. They were like my favorites.
Well, that's
go in the direction. Go in that direction then.
Love it. Okay, we've got one more question, and then if we could hear some poetry after that. So you built a massive platform sharing astrological insights, but today we're focused on storytelling behind the stars. What is the one thing that you hope listeners take away from this more personal side of your journey?
It's going to sound really simple, but I mean, because content creation is also creative. If you're not having fun writing, painting, pottery wheel spinning, or YouTube content creating, it's all creative. Don't do it. Like, as soon as the fun is gone, stop, because that's a sign, again, it's going to drain you. And I found times in this journey on my content creation where I've had to take a step back because I'm on a treadmill of creation and I'm not having fun. And now I'm having fun again. So I've got back into the group, but it comes through in the outcome, whether it's your poem, it's your piece of pottery. If you're feeling like this is a drudgerous thing that you must do, and even though it's a creative act, the energetic signature underneath that product or that outcome is really tangible for other people. They recognize it, right? Like, if I'm tired and I'm not feeling the fun, I'm rushing through a video and I'm talking faster than my normal auctioneer voice. Those videos don't do as well, right? When I'm fully present, enjoying the moment in my content creation, those videos do much better.
I have noticed that if I'm writing something, I crochet. So I can look at something and remember the song that was playing when I crocheted that particular part. And I think that gets somehow embedded energetically. And I think it's the same with our mood. Whatever we're creating, it gets wrapped up in it. And I think that other people can sense that as well. I wanted to point something out that you said earlier when you were talking about writing. If you're writing and you feel refreshed and vibrant afterwards, it's the right path. And if you feel like, oh, this is just not working. I mean, definitely check in with your body. like as a physical experience, and because your body can tell you like whether or not this is working for you or not.
Yeah, and time is so fucking cool. When I'm writing and I'm on, like they got a hotline to the muse and the channel's got no static, I'm like, that was 3 hours. I felt like I sat down 10 minutes ago. And when the muse and I have a high static line and I'm struggling, not only am I tired at the end of it all, but I mean, like, oh my God, time is not like flying at all. Time is in fact dragging out.
Yeah, it's all relative, right?
Yeah, but it's funny 'cause I think that fleeting time, fast-footed time, is a sign that you are in the muse, you're in the flow, you're in that flow state. Time is flying, right? And then you know it
Yeah.
because you can't believe how quickly time passed while you were sitting at your desk writing,
Right.
or at a coffee shop for me. Yeah.
So lucky. I have to sit in a corner by myself. I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna experiment with my.
You have that amazing cat. So I mean, I'm jealous. Your cat looks like that. I love the intro.
Miss Mirabelle. Yes, she's our little star around here. She definitely loves being catty on television. So yes, she was. I got to tell you how I got her. So like I had quit smoking about 3 or 4 years ago, and I was up one morning before everybody else, and I used to go out on the porch and have a cigarette. And it had been months since I'd done that, and I just had this I felt like I really needed to go sit outside on the porch. So so I just went outside, and I hear this little me, and the thought in my head is cats only say meow if they're talking to humans. So she's apparently looking. This creature is looking for me. So I'm meow meow, and this little black and orange fuzzy ball of fur, hungry, comes bounding across the yard and just meow meow meow. And like that's how Mirabelle and I like became. She's my fabulous little fur daughter.
Yes. She's your familiar.
Yes, she is. My other cat passed. The one that you said was a dragon. Yeah, she passed away, but I think she's still around. So, but Mirabelle came. The Bell sisters. They didn't like each other though. Mirabelle she's so gentle. She tried to play with my 20-year-old cranky calico cat. She tried to play with her, and she's like bat, bat, bat. And Tinkerbell took one look at her and just like, and Mirabelle's like looked at her like too rough and walked away. And that was the end of their relationship. So they tolerated each other from the other end of the room. So okay, well, it's poetry time. If you want to pull up some poetry, and if anybody has any questions, if we have a couple minutes at the end, drop them in the chat, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoy what we were watching. We do this every Saturday. We are wrapping up this season in a couple of weeks, but we will be back. So
okay, so I have some poems in the back end of the Awakened Dreamer blog. They were written in a dog's age ago, 2009, 2010. I'll read a couple of my favorites, I suppose. And then during the pandemic, I got back to writing poetry in Montreal all alone with no life because we had a huge shutdown in Canada, very strict rules. And I wrote a poem back then that I still really like. And I think what is interesting, I still recognize my poems tend to be predictive or prophetic in some way, either about my life or the collective. So I think I'll read that one as well. And then I'll read a couple of the Awakened Dreamers. And the Awakened Dreamer poems were really about me and my spiritual journey, although I didn't recognize what I was writing when I wrote it. Like I didn't understand I was predicting an enlightenment episode and it would change my sense of self. So I'll read a couple of those. And I'll also read right now. I'm just going to read the other one that I wrote. Totally different tonal quality. I have no idea what it's really for, but it was kind of channeled through me. And if I remember correctly, vaguely, there may have been some kind of an eclipse going on at that time too. I wrote it in December of 2019. So the eclipse cycle would have been going through Gemini Sag, if I remember correctly. So, alrighty. So why did I write this poem? No clue. I literally don't know. I walked into my kitchen and a poem just suddenly opened up.
You looked into the fires and there it was. All right, we're going to hop off and give you the stage.
Okay. Well, all right. So we're going to read the call, which I wrote sometime in the pandemic. I think it was 2020. I think 2019 is too early, but I wrote this during a pandemic and I think during an eclipse. And I don't, as I said, know exactly why I wrote it, but it's kind of a fascinating poem. So I'm reading it to you guys. It's called The Call. We need the dark witches now, power beyond love and light, where the deep links brilliant truth. Oh, sorry, where the deep inks brilliant truth across souls hungry for what matters. We need the dark witches now who remember that love too carries a sword, that change cleaves the new from the old. We need the dark witches now who know that no birth is without pain, that cord cutting heralds new life. We need the dark witches now who speak the language of love in sharp words, because true wisdom shears away falsity. We need the dark witches now, ebony wings up for the fight, to remember this time is for the crossing, and that all thresholds bode peril, known and unknown. I call on you, sisters and brothers of the deep, magicians with unbounded power, sourced in uncompromising love. Will you stand with me, united, that we may cross safely, and carry on our courage, those yet to remember, they too have wings. And what that poem is for, I'm not sure, but it came out of the pandemic center point when everything looked like the wheel would not hold. The center cannot hold. And that's how that poem was birthed into being. So the other stuff I wrote back in the day, which is going back to my Wake and Dreamer blog, turned out to be my own autobiography of my future. Not understanding that at the time, not even interested in enlightenment. I wasn't going to meditation circles. I didn't have a guru. It wasn't on my radar, yet it was coming for me. So one of the ones I wrote, let's see, what year did I write that, baby? March of 2009. The awakening was 2.5 years later. And I called it God breathing down my neck. I gave up seeking God lifetimes ago. I quit. It wasn't paying well. It had no medical benefits. All this longing and searching, beseeching and praying for what? For the specialness of a saffron robe, a life of celibacy, a kosher existence. In this life, I gorged on bacon and fucked like an animal and never once sat down cross-legged to meditate. In this life, I let go. I decided to stop looking. This is really funny. When I stopped looking, God found me. When I was minding my own sweet business, God kept butting in. What a pain in the ass. After eons avoiding me, God suddenly can't stop harassing me. Okay, what next? Do I step? Do I stop? Do I say without a grain of hesitation, yes? What happens when I stop running, and what happens when God catches me? I'll let you know. So that was about me not even wanting to seek enlightenment in this lifetime, and yet enlightenment, I guess, finding or seeking me. And I was yearning in a way for some deeper truth, because I had fallen out of love with life. I had been disenchanted by life. I had felt like, life was letting me down. So these poems were also coming through a time in my life where I felt a sense of great disappointment in life. So one of the poems I wrote after that one, it's called Hide and Seek. A similar theme is coming through here. I thought the game was eternal, that forever God would seek. The rules were omnipotent, the strategy ever present, the game plan divine simplicity. God closed her eye and counted to 3, while I ran at light speed and tucked myself into a singularity at the far reaches of awareness. The waiting after an eon got boring. God looked while I fell asleep and dreamed I was awake in a world where God hid and I sought, where God was lost and would never be found, where the rules were mortal, the strategy terminal, and the game plan infinitely complex. I must have screamed in my sleep, alerted God to my whereabouts, because just when I thought the nightmare was real, just when I had forgotten it was only a dream, I felt a gentle nudge on my shoulder, the whisper of her voice, uttering the inevitable blessed outcome of any game played with God. I win, she said, with absolute glee in her eye, while I let the ecstasy of losing fill me to overflowing. I've learned this. The trick to playing any game with God is to remember that winning is losing and losing is winning. Now, there's a poem that I wrote that's not even about the enlightenment story. And I like that one. So I'm going to grab it, because all the poems, if you read through the Wake and Dreamer, you'll see that I'm really tangling tangoing with existential themes about God, grace, and awakened awareness and surrender as well. But a couple of poems I wrote, I actually like. I think it's still about enlightenment in a way. So I'll read The Weaving, and I'll read the poem about my mother's garden. And I think that's in this lineup. So The Weaving happened one morning. I actually did this thing that happens in the poem. I opened the front door of my house, and there was a giant spider's web there. I mean, huge. It must have been 2 feet by 2 feet. And I accidentally walked through it. Now, I don't mind spiders, but I don't like walking through their web because I'm pretty sure there's a spider on my body. But I'm not terrified of them or anything. But it really got me into a reflective mode that day. So the poem is The Weaving. Did you know something good is always trying to happen, even when a loose thread unravels the whole of existence, or one snag in the dream time becomes a gap in the fabric of your plans? I walked through a web one morning, a shimmering creation that spider had spun right over my door, placed so that when I crossed the threshold, I tore right through all the hard work, all the night's weaving, leaving a hole in my path. And in a certain light, I knew that this was not a destruction, but a way through to something, that my clumsy passage had left a possibility in my wake, an opening. You know, something glorious is always trying to happen. So those poems were in the fall of 2009. Wow, it's so long ago. And I have a poem, I think here. For anybody listening to this who's on a path for a spiritual encounter with truth, you're going to find yourself usually disenchanted with life. Something about the pleasures and the game itself and the carrot stick that the donkey's chasing after becomes somewhat transparent and empty. And so a poem I did write about that I like is After the Party. It was a real party for a girlfriend. Okay. Then I woke up the next day with this poem in my mind. Her girlfriend's birthday party that went south, by the way. But this poem kind of speaks to like the disenchantment with reality at the surface level. And that often opens us up to look deeper and find truth. So it's called After the Party. I woke one day to the first sober light, a glint of truth in a dull sky. This light bore no warmth, no hint of benevolence. Instead, inglorious, the dawn cast a cold brilliance, a harsh reminder of what was lost. All the abandon in the world, all the revelry cannot forever keep me with the lure of pleasure from joy. This masquerade never really began. I dreamed the mask, and in the steel of this new day, I awake faceless. I always thought God was kinder. And my mom's garden poem, I really like that one. Where did it go? Remembering Eden. My mom was a gardener, and she was a flower gardener. And she died when I was only 39 in a car accident. She was a pedestrian fatality. And I had a premonition about that. And I channeled that someone close to me was going to die the day before she died. I wrote it down in a channeling session. And it was a prophetic, bit of information, but I couldn't tell who was going to die. But, years and years of processing the loss of my mother and my inability to forecast it as accurately as I could have as a psychic to prevent her from crossing the street that day had been well healed by the time I wrote this poem. So something else emerged from the aftermath of losing a mother at 39 years old. And she was only 66, and I'm 62, guys, so I'm almost there. So she was very young and she was very healthy. She was a healthy 66-year-old. So remembering Eden. In my mother's garden, there are many splendid deaths. Marigolds rise up to the sun while the last tulip bows down to the earth in a curtsy of falling petals. We take our turns in this garden, each of us, opening as fully as we dare to the sky, rooted in time and space, yet reaching for beyond in a flourish of hope. My mother grew flowers in a bed of rocks each spring, planting pansies and morning glories, pruning the wild rose bush my father uprooted from the side of a forest road. Days before she died, she said, "I won't plant a garden next year." She knew her flowering was complete, that the earth was calling her back. I wonder now why I never mourned her leaving. When the last tulip took her boughs, the whole garden clapped in wild applause, and the sky kissed the ground in appreciation. In my mother's garden, every performance is loved. Oh, I love that poem. May of 2011. And 6 months later, this massive awakening happened. I probably wrote that poem as my closing the door on the understanding of, the death of someone close to you, and understanding that there's nothing about death that is ever wrong. But I can surprise I teared up about it. Still, I guess it still touches me. So those are some poems that I have written, and you can go to Sexy Love Poems to God at theawakenedreamer.com, and you will find that poetry there.
Yeah, that line about the ending where it was the performance and everything was just like beautifully dramatic, and that got me. That was very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. It's so inspiring to be here. I know, really inspiring my artists to be in this community with you guys.
I'm good. I'm glad. Yes, please come to the creative side. We have creativity. I was gonna say we have cupcakes, but we can't give out the cupcake. We have kitties.
How can I come to the creative side if you don't do your Darth Vader voice?
Come to the creative side. No, I'll do my Mirabelle voice though. Come to the creative side, Lori. But we do have Sansa. Sansa made a cameo. It's always nice to see her. Hi, Sansa. So,
guys, I need a cat. I need a cat. I've always had dogs. I need to get a cat.
If you're going to start writing, you definitely need a cat.
Okay. So cat's on the menu of must gets.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pens, check. Coffee house, check. Cat, check. You're good.
Yep.
I think ML had one question for you. Yep. Do you have any rituals that you use to connect with your muse?
No, absolutely not. I put my ass in a coffee shop, and then I I open the laptop, I get the coffee, the gluten-free muffin or something, set myself up, and then tune out of the noise in the shop and tune in. And I don't like, by the way, coffee shops that are dead silent. So I'm always going to like a Starbucks where I know tons of people will be there, even if it's not the best coffee. So no, I don't have a ritual. Maybe I should get a ritual.
That sounds like a ritual to me, though. I mean, it's like you knew exactly the gluten-free muffin, the coffee, and the noise in the coffee shop. That's very modern witchcraft, if you ask me. Yeah,
you're right. It doesn't work to go there and have a matcha. No, it's got to be coffee.
It's right. I can only write poetry if the muffin has chocolate chips.
Well, it's kind of a ritual then. Yes, I desperately look for a gluten-free pastry of some kind to go with the coffee, and that is a ritual in its own right.
Yeah, it's that creating that space. That's what it's always about for me, creating the space so that like the muse like giving the muse the little like ding, we're going live.
Yeah, or it's like when you put the food out for Santa Claus, right? Because the milk and whatever cookies or whatever. Here's my coffee. Here's my muffin. Let's get rolling. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you so much, Lori, for coming on the show. We've appreciated having you so much. This has been such a
I am so happy to be here, Penelope. We've known each other for 8 years, and all your creativity inspires the heck out of me. Maybe even longer when we first met online. And like keep going, and don't give up with that moon Athena in your 10th house. This is an author of great renown. So you must continue forward.
I will. I've got 7 books planned. I'm only on the second one. So
okay.
Yeah, Athena's looking out for me for sure. She's like, we got 5 more to write. We're all right. So
thanks,
I can't wait
Wendy.
to see what you can't wait to see what you start writing if you sit down to write. Go to that coffee shop.
I think I'll finish the one that I started on the eclipse, the novel, because it is written from a male perspective. And that's not common for me. So I thought, okay, I've got a male main character coming through in first person narrative. I'm going to go with this one. It'll take me way outside my comfort zone of female characters. I'm more easily adaptable to writing.
That's Ditcher's Requiem, which if you want to download a copy of it, it is always free. The link is in the description. Ditcher's Requiem was my first person male perspective. Sebastian, he's an actor in Hollywood who's seeing who's seeing things, and it's very dark, and it's psychological horror. It's got an exploding T-Rex, but it's also very, very spiritual, and that was the one I wrote to help heal my broken heart. So I offer that to free everybody. So if you want to grab a copy, I'll send it to you. But we need to switch. We need to switch male first perspectives, because when I wrote it, I was like, I don't even know. Do I sound like a dude? Like, can I sound like a dude? Like, I don't know. I'm gonna try though.
Well, this is where the muse has to be very helpful. You'll know you're in groove with the muse if your voice doesn't sound like your own voice, for one thing. And then if it sounds like you're actually gender crossed over to another gender mindset, you know, because I mean, it's certainly not something I've ever done in writing. No, it's not true. Just when we finished up, when I was in grade 10, I won an award for this like novelette that I wrote from a male perspective character, but that's the last time. Grade 10.
I can't wait to see what happens with it. I'm very excited to read it. Can't wait to see what you do. Tiara, if you want to check her out, she's on Substack. She does sexy horror stuffs, and she's always got a hot take. I think her current obsession is I want to say Nostradamus, but that's not right.
Nosferatu?
Yes. She's been obsessed with like for the last couple of months. So, and we love it.
Oh,
and
wonderful. I'll check that out on Substack for sure.
Yes, I haven't posted anything just yet, but I'm working on things. I'm working on something else that's being published next month, so I'm kind of focusing on that. So
you did the Female Rage anthology,
Female
right?
Rage anthology coming out. On
I've read it.
International
It's really good. Yay! Yeah. All right, this is the part where we all wave at the camera until I figure out how to end the stream. So bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
I pushed the button. No, I didn't push the button. Shoot. Sorry.